Okay, so we laid out this head. Might define her forehead a little bit more. I want to really make sure that I'm drawing light. Now the eye, especially if you look at her eye right now, is very deep and not terribly defined. So what we're looking for here is those three curves. She has a little bit of red here. Let me, maybe if I can get zoomed in. But remember, that's going to be a curve because really the eyeball is curved. And a little upturn right there. You can, the top of the eyelid covers up a lot of the iris on the top, a little bit of the iris on the bottom. And then we have the pupil. And we have a couple different little spectral highlights in there that I want to make sure I'm leaving. That'll make it look wet and sparkly. Now, a lot of times there is this this kind of ring that's a little darker. I mean, she has blue eyes, but it still has a little darker ring. And then typically in the middle, this is just a muscle that contracts and expands. But it comes out from the center. So what I want to do is I want to make my lines kind of coming out from the center. And it's typically a little darker closer to the iris than it is, the pupil than it is the outside. So I'm just going to give some indication now. Now, depending on how close up, what kind of a picture you have, as well as what kind of, how big the eye is in your actual drawing, how much detail you're going to put in that. But so my exposure is not the greatest, so it looks a lot better on my page than it does here. But then we have the other fold up here. But one of the things I want to talk about is like my hand. My hand, if my hand is like this, you can kind of see a little bit of a shadow. So that's kind of the way your eyelid is. Your eyelid produces a little bit of a shadow on your eye. So your eye is not perfectly white. Now if I put my other hand here, for the other eyelid, it doesn't produce as much shadow because the light is coming and hitting here. In this case, the light is hitting on the top and creating a shadow underneath. So that's what we want to do with these eyes, and I think in most cases when you wear eyeshadow, you put it on a little heavier on the top too. So this top eyelid is going to be a little heavier shadow, but it is a shadow, so we wanted to make this a soft line. So on the top it's going to be a hard, sharp line, but on the bottom it's fading out, and that's going to darken this eye as well, the iris. And so it's really a fuzzy thing because I've got this shadow. Now then you're going to have to look at this. The light's going to hit here. That's going to be a darker shadow than on the top of that line. Now this might have some shadow, but again, it's going to be shadowed up because this is protruding and it's catching some of that light. Now she's got really dark in here, and we would want to get that darker, and we'd work on that. But notice also too that there's a little thickness here on that eyelid, and that's where the eyelashes go. They don't come right out of the eyeball itself. So kind of like my fingers, if they're pointing straight at you, don't look very long. But if I turn them on its side, they look a lot longer. So that's kind of foreshortening. So the eyelashes that are pointing right at us are going to be a little short, but they are going to be kind of, still I'm thinking they're going away from the nose. This is the nose side. And as they go out, they're going to get longer because it's just like my fingers that are pointing at you or pointing away from you. So I'm going to make them short here, and as they come out away from the nose, they're going to get a little bit longer. And we don't want to make them all regular. They're maybe not all the same size. They may kind of overlap a little bit. They may have like an outlier. I know you have little combs to make them reasonably straight, but they still, if you look at it, an eye close up, there's some overlapping here. So they're a lot longer out away from the nose. They're a little shorter here, and then the bottom eyelashes are usually kind of some dots or just a few shorter ones here. They're not nearly as heavy as the top eye. So we really want to get that top eyelid shadowed pretty heavily, and then that little fold may have some shadow, but it's not going to be as dark as what's on top of that fold right there. Okay, then we're also going to look for some of the shadows here that the light's going to hit here, and there's a little bit of a bump. So we're going to shadow the underneath side of that, and we have to be real careful there. You're going to make somebody look pretty old. So let's do it on here real fast. I'm trying to make the spectral highlight in there. I want to make sure that pupil is centered on the iris, though. My pencil is kind of flat, so I kind of turned it to get that sharper side. Let's get a little shadow on that top, being cast down from the top eyelid. You could practice some eyes before you actually go on your good one. Then we've got this pretty deep shadow here. Now you notice I'm putting a lot of graphite on this paper, so I may need another piece of paper to put my hand on so that I'm not smudging all this around. Now you kind of have to look at the eyelashes or eyebrows, what direction the hair is growing. So it kind of grows here, and then it goes more horizontal, and then it may even start to go down a little bit. So we're going to look for those things. We're going to look for these shadows here. That's not a sharp line. It's a faded line. It does get a little dark in here, down in the corner. But now I'm going back to that flat spot on my pencil. And this really kind of curves up. The darkest dark kind of curves right up into the eyebrow. And so you can't really see, especially on this picture, you can't really see actual eyelashes. So we can just get that kind of fuzzier dark in here. There is a little bit of fat right here bulging out. It's catching some light, so we don't want to get that too dark right there. A little bit of shadow underneath her eye. So again, I'm going in those small little circles. Even though it looks like I'm going back and forth, I'm really not. And it kind of comes down and comes up to the corner, and maybe I got that a little bit too much. So I could either take my kneadable eraser or this one, and I'm not really erasing, I'm just dabbing it. And it picks it back up off the ground. So I want to see the bridge of the nose get lighter. So I've got to add some shadow here on the side of the nose. And it kind of cascades on down. There's a little light spot here, a little darker in here where that nose plane is coming down onto the cheek. And the underneath side of her nose is shadowed, and I could now spend a little bit more time on the actual nostril, and it's not very prevalent there. So a lot of these shapes get kind of fuzzy. Because right here, like, there is a definite starting and stopping of the eyelid, but there is not a definite starting and stopping of the nose. So you've really just got to stop and be a really good observer and what's going on. This kind of comes more of an angle here. Maybe a little bit lighter on the tip of the nose. Okay, so you're just going to stop and really check out what's light and what's dark. And it's lots of little layers. That's why we did that sphere to begin with, is to really get you into looking for subtleties in shadow. Not just, it's not pure black, it's not pure white. Otherwise, if you draw a straight line in here to pop out her cheeks, it's going to look like a cartoon. Now again, you're thinking about, where does the light coming? The light's coming and hitting the cheek, so it's going to shadow right here and not going to shadow on this part of her upper lip. It's going to shadow right here because the light's hitting, and this is going to be more of a round. So it's kind of like a sphere right here, and you got the shadow and the highlight on the sphere. A lot of this is super subtle. If we shade too much, especially on a female, that's really going to make them look old. Okay, we're going to look for then little white highlights, little, maybe her lips are a little bit wet, little. So we want to make sure that we're leaving that white. I have to take. I would spend a couple hours probably on this, but you don't want to watch me for a couple hours, so I have this thinking about it's shadow, highlight, shadow. So it's kind of like a big cylinder as well. Oops, sorry. We're going to look for this. There's not a real sharp jawline. It's just kind of fuzzy. They're a little bit darker there, but the neck is shadowed, and there's a little bit of this part of the head has a little bit of a shadow. So this is not necessarily going to be, you're rarely going to see really sharp edge lines. That's why I'm drawing light, but I haven't erased anything here, because I know that when I go to do the hair, I can kind of shave off a little bit of the head if I need to, and this is going to be black. So you're going to have to just stop and really look at the details and how these subtle shades change. Okay, I'm gonna have to go to a different class now, and I'll come back and show you kind of some hair and maybe refine this a little bit more. Okay.